not your butterfly. I'm not your picture bride. I am a samurai woman who holds up half the sky. I haven't bowed my head. I haven't bound my feet. I have endured the heat. I'm not afraid to lead. I am. Barefoot gardener, a lover, a healer, I'm a memory keeper. I am a dancer, I'm a freedom believer. I am a seeker, I'm a cultural weaver. I am, I am, hey, I am, hey, I am. Your butterfly, I'm not your picture bride. I am a samurai woman who holds up half the sky. I have unbowed my head, I have unbound my feet. I have endured the heat. I'm not afraid to lead. Hey, hey, hey. I am a woman who holds up half the sky. You are the women who hold up half the sky. We are the women who hold up half the sky. We are the women who hold up half the sky. We are the women who hold up half the sky. We are the women who hold up half the sky. We are the women who hold up half the sky. We are the women who hold up half the sky. Hey, hey, we hold up half the sky. We are the women who hold up half the sky. We are the women.
Hello, everyone. I guess our program will now begin. My name is Harvey Dong, and I'm with Eastwind Books of Berkeley. And I also teach part-time at Asian American and Asian Diaspora Studies at UC Berkeley. These are two of today's co-sponsors. And additionally, the third co-sponsor for today is JSA of the East Bay. I want to acknowledge that we are located on unceded Ohlone lands and thank the Ohlone people for use of this space. Eastwind Books of Berkeley has been in operation since 1982, almost 40 years. Myself and my wife, Beatrice, took it over in 1995. And today it serves as an important cultural and political space to learn from the past and to change the world. Through the years, we have met many people, and one person who stands in our hearts today is Rob Takashi Yanagita, an old-time activist from New York City who deeply believed in community, social change, and resistance. Rob helped us establish Eastwind Books Multicultural Services and remained a member of its nonprofit board until his passing. We dedicate this event to Rob Takashi Yanagita. Today we have an opportunity to celebrate a defining work, Not Yo Butterfly, by Nobuko Miyamoto, songwriter, dance and theater artists, and longtime political and cultural activists. Participating are many people who have contributed to the Asian American movement and have influenced and supported, or were influenced and supported by Nobuko's work. Assisting with introductions will be Deborah Wong, professor of musicology at UC Riverside and editor of Not Yo Butterfly. Okay.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you to Eastwind Books. I love your bookstore. I have bought books there. I thought about piling them up and showing them to everyone, but I love your bookstore, and thank you so much for having us today. This is going to be an extraordinary event today. There's a number of guests. What we are doing is celebrating Nobuko Miyamoto's memoir, just published 10 days ago. Here it is. We're going to be talking about not the entire book, because the entire book tells Nobuko's life up until, like, last year, right? So there's a lot in this book. Today, we're going to be focusing on just one small part of it, really kind of in the center of the book, the years in New York City, in the early 1970s. But first, let me just, as if you didn't already know about Nobuko Miyamoto, let me just, tell you a bit about her. Nobuko is a legendary figure in the Asian American community. She's a true community-based artist in every sense of the word. She's the founder and ongoing artistic director of a nonprofit organization in LA called Great Leap, which is now over 40 years and absolutely central to the interethnic community-based arts in Southern California. Nobuko's beloved in the Asian American and indeed in the entire SoCal scene. She's well known. She's a mover. She's a shaker. She's known for her compassion, for her incredible ability to connect people and to make people feel seen and heard. And a lot of what Nobuko does, she teaches us through music and through dance over and over again. She teaches us how to stand up for social justice through music, through dance, through talking, through hanging, all those things. And I should say that Nobuko is always busy with several projects all at the same time, but this year, 2021, is especially significant because not only has her memoir just been published, as I say, 10 days ago, but her double album came out from Smithsonian Folkways in January of this year, and it's a compendium of 50 years of Nobuko's music making. And a lot of the music here is, in fact, also new, brand new stuff that she wrote and recorded just in the last year or so. So Nobuko, come on, you're going to be on for the rest of the show. Come on, yeah. And you and I are going to be talking and with each other and with a lot of different people. And could you sort of bring us into the scene that we're going to be focusing on today? New York City, early 1970s. Tell us where we're focused today.
Well, we decided to focus on this particular moment because of between 1970 and 1973, when in New York City, when so much awakening was going on and across the country for Asian Americans. But what started in New York City and spread across the country, really, some of us moved from the East Coast to the West Coast, and so. Because this is the Bay Area that we're in with Eastwind Books, and thank you so much, Harvey and Bea, all the work your team has done to put this together. And also I want to bring in the space again, reminding, I call him Takashi because that's how I first met him, Takashi Yanagita, that he is with us here because he was with us then in those early days at Basement Workshop and Chickens Come Home to Roost. He was there. And he's here right now with us. So I just want to acknowledge that. So I want to actually, so of course it was Yuri Kochiyama who was the one who really brought me into the Asian American movement, because I was there helping to make a film about the Black Panthers called The Seas of the Time with an Italian filmmaker, a documentarian, Antonello Branca, and met her at the Young Lord's Church. And I think I met SB there at the time. I saw SB there at the same time, Esperanza Martel, who's going to be coming up soon. And it was just to see Yuri in that space with all these people of color. And then she invites me to come to Asian Americans for Action. I mean, I had no idea what these folks were. You know, was this the Asian version of the Black Panthers? What was it? You know, it was a moment. So I'm going to read this bit from that happened with me and my brother Bob as we stepped into an elevator, into an ancient elevator, a jail-like metal cage that creaked and bumped us upwards like the fits and starts of our lives, taking us to an unknown destination. After our release from its shackles, we walked into a small office, and soon we knew we had landed in the right place at the right time. We were strangers, but we were greeted like a long-lost brother and sister. That's what we were. We had been lost from our tribe, severed from our roots, our family, our homeland, wandering and wondering why we could not feel rooted and accepted, why we were still foreigners in the place of our birth. Now we were found, not just because they mirrored what we looked like, but because we were all seeking answers, seeking solutions, seeking justice. We were like severed neurons suddenly awakened, excited in a moment of recognition, leaping to reconnect. So that's the scene. Me and my brother, I want to bring my brother Bob Miyamoto on because he was so much a companion in this journey in New York City and in Los Angeles. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
Your little brother, Bob, right? And I should say to the audience that you're going to be meeting today a number of the people who are in the book, who were in the scene, who were there with Nobuko and Bob and others. Please, also, I'm going to say to the audience, please use the chat throughout our session today, our event today. Drop in your questions, drop in your responses, use the chat, please. Okay.
So Bob, you know, when we walked into that space of Asian Americans for Action and out of that crazy elevator that felt like, whoa, what was this? What were you feeling when you walked in that room and saw this group of not only younger, but elder Asian Americans?
Yeah, I think my first impression, of course, is well, New York, fairly new to New York, and just the getting out of a freight elevator and going to their meeting room was an adventure in itself. But yeah, meeting elders like our parents who were really politically active was something very new to both Nobuko and myself, and it was not shocking, but so surprising to have people like our parents who are really on the forefront of what's going on.
Yes.
They were involved in so much stuff, not just at that time, but even prior to that time. So they had a whole history of political activism.
And we walked in the room, and then their children were there, which was so weird. Like Chris, and I don't know if Eddie, if you were there, but there were people that had, you know, their parents, and especially Chrissy Jima and his parents were there. So, and it was a lively conversation, and they were really, I felt so green, you know, in this place, because I was blown away that two generations could be in the room together, and I couldn't imagine our folks. Could you, Bob? You know, it was like totally different than our folks who were always trying to say, stay away from trouble. You know, they thought we were crazy when we were going to demonstrations and things in LA. So it was a different kind of experience for us to be marching in Washington. Remember that first march in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, I think also we were pretty unaware of an Asian American movement in New York, or because we were dealing with this film that Antonella was making. So it was an awakening for us to see an Asian American activist group that we were just totally blown away by.
And then soon we found ourselves in Chicago at the JCL convention, where actually where the first song Chris and I wrote. We just stumbled into writing a song. I don't know if you were there that night, Bob, after we had visited the Black Panthers and Native Americans in Chicago, as well as all these Asian Americans from the West Coast. It was like a reunion, and that night Chris pulled out his guitar and just started noodling around, and then pretty soon he got into a groove. I didn't know he played, he didn't know I sang, and we just stumbled into writing this song called The People's Beat, which was based on Fred Hampton's phrase that he used about that moment of listening to the people's beat, and the people were going to be behind us. So that was actually the very first song that we wrote. And then we realized, oh my God, when we sang it and we felt on both sides, that was an electric moment when we realized we never had our own song. We didn't see people like us singing and making music. It was, and then we knew it was something special had happened. So we went back to New York and we wrote 5 or 6 songs. And I don't know if any of you were there at the Buddhist temple in New York City, and we raised just enough money to go west. But before we get to that, I want to bring on Eddie. I'm sorry, we're going to jump around a little, because of course the Kochiyama family was key in how we came into the movement, and having a sense of family, and of teaching us what it was really to be in community. And so I want to read another little short phrase before we talk to Eddie about the place. Apartment 3, and in the book you corrected me. I said
3B.
Yeah, and I said it was 3C, right? Sorry, so I am correcting this right now. Apartment 3B was not like any home I'd ever been to. It was a quiet retreat from a busy New York life. It was a meeting house, a guest house, a drop-in center, a family hostel, where you might find Black and Puerto Rican comrades, acquaintances, and strangers from anywhere in the world passing through to eat and rest their heads for a night or two, or even sometimes weeks. So, wait a minute. It was beyond my comprehension how the Kojiyamas and their 6 children, plus guests, managed to live in that compact 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. Before long, 3B became my second home. So, what was it like, Eddie, being a Kochiyama? Explain to me, especially being a kid in that environment.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I met Nobuko when I was just 15 years old, and she was 30. And my first impression was, man, she is gorgeous. And so she was my first crush. But anyway, her home also became like a second home to me. And often we'd be hanging out. Uncle Bob always had some really good weed and some wine and stuff. And so one night I go, and my mother used to call Nobuko and Bob and said, is Eddie still hanging out? And Nobuko said, yeah, but he's leaving right now. So one of the common things, I go home, and it's like 3 a.m. My mom's up in the kitchen writing letters to political prisoners, just writing speeches. So I'm walking back to my bedroom. She goes, oh, no, you can't sleep there. I'm like, why? She goes, we have a guest. So she goes, sleep in the living room. So I was thinking, why didn't you tell the guest to sleep in the living room? I could sleep in my own bedroom. But anyway, about 2 hours later, I'm sleeping on the couch, and about 5 in the morning, I hear this voice, and it was this turn around, and this Black woman, the sister Gwen Patton, who's like one of the leaders of SNCC. And she just goes, "Hey, Eddie, move over." Like, are you kidding me? But that was something pretty common in my mom's house.
Hey, I think we have a couple of photos that we could show of Yuri.
Yes, there they are. Yes.
Wow.
Good time, yes. I don't want to ask you how many demonstrations you've been to, Eddie, before you were even 15.
I have no idea. Many.
Yes. And then also, you moved around a lot with Chris and me. I mean, once we started moving around, it seemed like you were always on gigs with us. Remember that?
I'm sure I have the Guinness Book World Records for the most gigs I've seen you guys play at anyone in the country.
Also, you heard us argue a
But it
lot.
was a lot of fun. Yes, you guys did argue a lot. And I remember being in the studio when you were recording Grain of Sand, and I was like, oh man, I hope they get through. You know, even just 2 songs. So they would have to take periodic breaks to chill out.
No, once we got on the stage, we were fine. But and later we ask ourselves, what were we arguing about? You know, because Steve Louie said, Steve Louie reminded me that it was like I was always trying to make the situation, the sound better, the lights better, that we should rehearse actually. And Chris was like, he was like, he didn't want to be bothered with all that. But so that was a lot of the argument. And then there were political differences too that eventually we moved through. But so what happened is that pretty much immediately we started on a tour. And after we did that first concert, remember at the Buddhist temple, we were on the road. And I don't know how this happened, but I'm going to read a little bit of it, and then we're going to bring on Harvey and Jeff.
Jeff.
So as it turned out, the first concert did earn us enough money for 2 one-way tickets to LA. We were trusting that we'd find our way back, I guess. Our West Coast organizers in the movement, Warren Furatani, Jeff Morey, and Harvey Dong, pulled a tour together from LA to San Francisco with stops in Modesto, Fresno, Sacramento, and I can't remember where else. It was the beginning of many tours over the next 3 years. These were not rock and roll tours. They were Spartan and proletarian. We stayed in collective houses, slept on couches and floors, schlepped from gig to gig in VW vans. And we dined on exotic cuisine unheard of in the Big Apple. For instance, Mago's teriyaki guacamole burgers in West LA, or late lunches at Suihiro's in Little Tokyo with choices from column A or column B, always with a portion of potato salad, a very JA thing. Anyways, so I don't know what we ate in San Francisco, but I remember being there, and I remember coming to the Bay Area and just being amazed at the activity that was going on, the organizing and the community support that was right there, present.
There we go. There's Harvey. How about Jeff?
Hi.
Hi,
So-
Jeff. Hi, Harvey.
Hi.
Yeah, our whole movement started and really took root in the Bay Area after the strikes at San Francisco State, UC, Berkeley, and the connection around the state of California. But and so actually at that time it was all it was all youth movement, and then unlike New York, we had some Nice's activists involved, but not as an organization. But we had people like Yuri Wada, Edison Uno, and they were a very important part of our support Dr. Marassi at State College. Well, when we had the opportunity, because Warren actually helped us connect with you from LA, because Warren was working for the JCL at that time as a national organizer, youth organizer, and I took over as a part-time position as I was working with JCYC.
And how old were you? How old were you then?
I was 19
Wow.
years old, and having a good time because we weren't afraid of things, or because we didn't know any better. We just did what we felt we had to do. And I think that was very important that in our development. So when we had that opportunity, I remember we had that 18-room Victorian on Sutter Street where you and Chris performed, and it was an extended living room, and the place rocked. So people had such a great time because you and Chris really brought, I think for the first time, some of the movement to music and words that people related to. And not only that, you were both so personable that I think that it made it easy for people to get involved with touring. Like, I mean, I remember that's how I met Steve Louie from New York. And also a lot of the people, depending on who had time between school and work, they would go on tour as well. So there was it. My wife said we were groupies. I say we were entourage. But
There was a lot of people moving around with us.
a lot of people moving around, and very true too. It was all about sleeping bags, and sometimes we didn't have sleeping bags, and we would sleep on floors, and people were stepping over each other. By the time after hanging out all night and knowing that we had to go somewhere the next day, so it was a great experience, and I'm grateful for that in many ways, Nobuko too, because we've been friends for a very long time, and at the same time too, I get to know Kamal really well. Of course, I got to know Tarabu through the experience when more so when I was ready to go to college,
Yeah.
and then more recently I met Muhammad.
Yes.
Yeah. So
You've been with 3 generations of my family now.
yes, 3 generations of your family, and of course I met Bob along the way as well. So all said and done, I think it was very good because you, Chris, and help us connect a lot to people around the country as well.
That's true. It started a whole movement back and forth between New York and the East and West Coast also.
Yeah. And I have to say one other thing before to introduce Harvey is at that time we were all students. Harvey, UC Berkeley had more money than San Francisco State College on a higher budget. So a lot of the community facilities all were connected to the UC campus phone system. And we were making calls all over the place, and studies over at UC Berkeley helped us pay for our phone bill.
Oh my God, that's funny.
I think after they saw the bill, we got our budgets cut shortly after. You know? We also had access to cars and state cars because of the strike. You know, there was so much momentum built by the strike that we were able to gather quite a few resources, because that had to do with the movement, you know, and where it was at. You know, we were sending students into the community. I met Jeff at JCYC. We were sharing information. So there's lots of liberated spaces, and then your tour went from LA to Central Valley and Stockton and SF.
San Jose.
J-Town, Chinatown, Berkeley. There was an event there, so pretty much you could say that it was all riding on the crest of, you know, the power of the people, you know, the movement, and we were connecting with housing and seniors and tenants, and so there's lots of communications, and we're all about, you know, having roots in the community, in the working class, oral history, you know, of those that were interned, that went through exclusion, and your music spoke to that, you know. So it's definitely was a peak time period for the Asian American movement.
But also it became material for us to write songs, you
Yeah.
know. We were able, like griots, we would hear stories here and then we would take it to the East Coast, etc. And so it helped us to, we were moving around and actually being fed. The art of songwriting was being fed by the stories that we heard as we moved around. So in that way, it was like a griot. We were like griots. We were like the living internet.
In fact, let's hear a clip of music right now. And this part of your book, Nobuko, is so much part about, it's about coming to voice, you know, through music, through activism. This section of the book is absolutely full of music. We need a moment of music. Let's hear, I think it's Ichigo Ichie, right?
Yep. With two good friends.
色即是空空即是色色即是空空即是一五一会一五一会一五一会一五一会一五一会一五一会一五一会一五一会 Each moment, once in a lifetime. Each moment, never again. So before we bring on PJ and Mark, I just want to read a little bit. So Black people had a powerful legacy of music from their African roots, and evolving from field hollers to blues to ragtime. Their folk music grew into jazz, rock and roll, Black and hip hop. Black music has become America's music. But where was our music? And what is a people without their own song? Growing up in Asian America, we had the songs of our ancestors, but we no longer understood them. In our quest to be American, we often rejected the old music. We grew up hearing others' songs that filled our ears and captured us and formed our styles and attitudes, even taught us to move differently. Some were cool songs that we embraced and that spoke universal truths. But they didn't speak to our own experiences, our own roots. They didn't give us a memory line that connected us to our roots. We learned to see in ourselves. We learned to see in ourselves and what those, I'm sorry. No, okay. They didn't give us a memory line that connected us to our own roots. We learned to see ourselves in those who sang to us. In fact, we wanted to be them instead of who we were. We were a songless people. We were missing something that we didn't even know we longed for, our own song. So we want to bring on two people that have really been song makers for Japanese American community that really broke through and created music that we could claim and put our arms around, not only in its content, but in its form itself. Mark has embraced Japanese instrumentation along with his bass and created music around that. And PJ, who has been an innovator with taiko, which is really, I would say, the Japanese American contribution to American music. So both of you, I don't know who wants to start, but well, let's start with Mark.
Okay, thanks, Nobuko. This is great. It's so, I'm really honored to be part of this whole ensemble of your friends and family and artists have been with you for your lifetime achievements. And I guess I come in at another place in your musical, performance career, Warriors of the Rainbow. And I was telling Nobuko before, this is one of the first national tours I was ever on with Nobuko, and it was just, I came out of San Francisco State after the Third World Strike. And so there's Department of Ethnic Studies was going full swing. And that is what I embraced. And that's what I loved about Nobuko, is that it was so inclusive to all these people of color to say, we are all in this together. We need to work together. We're stronger together. And so that's where I came out of. And so Warriors of the Rainbow, of course, was a natural fit for me. And then at the same time, how was my being Japanese? Well, I went from the other direction. I studied with this incredible Gagaku master, Togisu Nobu, from the imperial household for almost 30 years. And I ended up spending 5 months in Japan studying with him. And it was, to me, like a cultural transmission. I learned something that was so old, it was modern, and people are still trying to figure out how that happened back in the ancient days. And so I got together with all these Black brothers and, Louis and George and Anthony, and we created this music. They wanted to know what I knew, and I wanted to learn what they knew. So we just embraced each other, and we created this music that was kind of a hybrid of jazz, Asian American jazz.
It's amazing strides that were made because music doesn't really know borders.
Right.
That's the one thing. If you love something and you like the way it sounds, that it's a language in itself that it doesn't, that you embrace, and that really pushed us forward in the search for a voice, for a song. And PJ, you also, from another angle, came at it.
Well, it all started with being at Berkeley and in Asian American Studies, the movement, and actually being in community organizing and getting credit in the field that Harvey was talking about. And because of Harvey and Jeff's stories of producing Chris and Joanne to come to the West Coast for your concerts, that's when I experienced my voice, or hearing my voice and another's. And I was completely turned around, not having grown up with an Asian American identity. And so I was still seeking back in the early 70s. So to hear your songs at that time and go, they're singing about me. They're singing our stories. And also the seeing things in perspective. People who are out in the streets, those were passionate speeches of protest and rising. But I go, they're saying the same things, but it's couched in music. And that music was internalized in my cellular being to hear your music. And I love to tell this story all the time. It's like seeing you at a concert, you and Chris would break out with what I call tankobushi rock. Everybody just would jump to their feet and they would just start dancing. Tankobushi, coal miners dance. And I go, oh my God, I've never danced like this. Oh my God, look at everybody, all these radical students, they're not like forlorn, serious faces. They're smiling ear to ear and they're connecting in this circle. I felt this immediate connection with everybody. And I love saying that 3 days later, I can still feel the smile from ear to ear, that energy. So that was the energy that was forever in my body. And it went for a couple of years later, where when I heard the Japanese drum, it was like identity on multiple ends. To hear your stories come out in music, and then to see taiko, just emblazoned in the body and expressing that way. I said, that's what I want to do. And that's what I pursued doing and discovering taiko. And I love the pictures that you showed of Yoko, you and I for Triangle Project.
Yes, that was a beautiful trio that we had so after being in our own organizations for so many years, had a chance to create the Triangle Project that brought Yoko Fujimoto from Japan. It was really Donna Ibata's idea to bring the three of us together, and we had a chance to not only make music together but tell stories, so that we could tell the stories of how we came into voice, and and her in Japan, you know, and that's the thing, the beauty of Taiko, that it did connect with Japan, connected with groups in Japan and the same thing with what you were doing, Mark, is that you were studying with Dogi Sensei, and you were steeped in this culture, um, and that was something that had been stolen from us, really, as a people.
Right. Yes.
I should ask where Mark and PJ, were you thinking in terms of like, traditional culture, got to go in search of traditional culture, or frankly, to me, both of you seem to be continuously generating newness, the contemporary, innovating. How have you both, at that point in time, how were both of you thinking about it?
I can go. Well, number one, our drums were not made in Japan. We had to forge and make our own equipment. So wine barrels. So right away, we're not like from Japan. And also at that time, San Jose Taiko was about creating our own music, and that we wanted to respect the music even coming from Japan. Even if you can hear it on the LPs, we didn't want to just copy it. We felt that those were expressions of the people, from that region. And so we were also trying to create our own voice through the drum.
I remember being at Senshin when I think Onde Koza came to town, and they were listening to Taiko, and they listened to and they were perplexed because they were hearing African rhythms. They were hearing other things than Japanese rhythms, because we had been growing up with hearing Black music, and Black music is part of our DNA. Just, we can't deny that was in our ears and our hearts. Right,
Mark, sure, you went in search of Gagaku, but you were also at ground zero of this amazing avant-garde, radical jazz, free improv, creative music scene in the Bay Area. Tell us about that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Deborah. I know Deborah has written some books about this stuff, so she probably knows more than I do.
No.
But, when Gagaku, like I saw, Bob Chang was in this Gagaku group, and he played the flute, right, Bob? And I think Kenny Endo's on the call. He was in the Gagaku group, Russell Baba, all these, Robert Kikuchi and Goho, all these different musicians that play different kinds of music wanted to learn Gagaku because this incredible treasure, this master from the imperial household was able to teach us all. So we all got together at the Institute of Buddhist Studies, and we learned it from him. And he loved our group because we're all musicians. We're all very dedicated. We practice, actually. Next lesson, we know what the song he was teaching us. He'd get mad at us all the time, of course, but, he was just really, later on, we found it was one of his favorite groups. But afterwards, we'd have to drop him off at the airport so we'd all meet back in Chinatown. And by that time, it was like 11 or 12. And at that time, Chinatown was open all night. So we'd stay there and talk about arts and music and what it means to be Japanese American, Asian American. What are we trying to do with our music? So we all play different kinds of music. But what's so nice about that group, it was very inclusive. Not one kind of music was better than the other. We're all searching for something. And Gagaku was something that brought us all together. So, it was a nice kind of way to embrace everybody.
Absolutely. And, Kenny, if he's on here, has become a master in Japanese percussion, and so all of this have been brought here. This knowledge has been brought here and disseminated to generations beyond. So you know, who knows what's going to happen. Of course, we hear the children of these artists, Russell Baba's son, and you know, uh, Gerald Oshta. I mean, so many great artists who passed it on to their children, actually. So, you know, there is a legacy here that will continue on beyond you, and you've made a huge. You and Kenny and all of you have made a huge contribution to this field of Asian American song. And I just want to say that, you know, PJ, you in the Taiko community, you call your compositions songs. Yeah, they're not compositions. You call them songs, and that's what this music really is to us. It's our song. So thank you so much for what you do and what you continue to do. And
Yeah.
it's really amazing. Thank you. It's to be with you.
So Mark and PJ have been working in the Bay Area for decades. Let's take the conversation back to New York City, to, 1972. Let's see an amazing clip from the Third World News Service
Okay.
from that time.
Now we also have squares in Morningside, Chelsea, Delancey, Chinatown, Lower East Side, Brooklyn, Bronx, and other parts of the world like Puerto Rico, Italy, Saigon, and so on and so on. If I go forward, and that is the first step.
Oh, that was an experience to be part of that movement. And I'm going to just read a little bit from, I don't know where to read from because it's so much, was a big part of who we became in that community in the Upper West Side. Me and Bob lived at 52 West 91st Street, and our apartment became a drop-in center. Every Friday night we would have these parties, and the parties were getting bigger and bigger and bigger, right, Bob? There were like 50 people in this one-bedroom apartment. It was just bursting from the seam. So at the same time, the Friday night gathering at 52 West was going into overflow, and more than 50 Asians every week. We needed a drop center for Asians on the West Side, outside of Chinatown. Maybe we could liberate a storefront, like what they're doing. A few of us, including Chris, Bob, and myself, decided to pay a visit to El Comité, just down the block at 88th and Columbus. Federico Lora, Esperanza Martel, and other members were so down to earth, friendly, and open to helping us. The walls of their office were covered with colorful posters reflecting campaigns for Puerto Rican independence, as well as the local issues like urban removal. That's what they called it, urban removal, not renewal. They took us around the neighborhood just like real estate agents. One of the places they showed us was a storefront at 88th and Amsterdam. It was boarded up, but looked like it was about the right size. It's a good location, subway around the corner, bodega down the block. No money down, take it. That's what Federico said, so we did. On the night of the takeover, our tiny crew of Asian ninjas rallied with El Comité and Joe, the mayor of the squatters. Joe was a Puerto Rican Paul Bunyan with a crowbar. He drove a tow truck and was used to heavy lifting. Within minutes, he broke through the metal gate, and he and the guys stripped the boards from the front of the windows. Then Joe gave us sisters shovels and brooms, and we began to clean. We were nervous as hell that we would get arrested. We were ready, but the police never came. So with the help of our neighbors, El Comité, we staked a claim for the West Side's Asian American Drop-In Center. We quiet Americans who were taught time-honored traditions: don't take too much, don't be noticed, don't bring shame on the family, and don't steal, liberated ourselves a storefront. Along with it, we liberated ourselves. So,
Great passage.
SP and Bob, what a moment that was. So SP, you were a big organizer in that community, and what did you think about these Asiaticos coming into your office?
Oh, first of all, I really want to thank you for being. I learned a lot about you in the book, that I didn't know. I didn't know that you were in West Side Story or The King and I. Anyway, and that you were passing for Puerto Rican. Oh my God. So I want to really, really thank you. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. The other thing is, look, there was the Black Panthers, there were the Young Lords out of the Bronx and East, and the East, El Barrio on the East Side. But there were movements. It was a very exciting period. There were movements all over the city, let alone the country. And there was the squatters movement on the west side of Manhattan, which was like from 86th Street up to 112, Amsterdam and Columbus. And it was like 24/7. We lived the moment. And we needed to figure out how to hold down this movement. So that part of it was bringing in more people from the community. And you were from the community, and people knew who you were. And we knew Yuri, right? And we knew Kasu. You gotta really understand that we were an anti-imperialist movement, right? Our focus was Puerto Rico and Latin America, but we were into building coalition of anti-imperialists, anti-colonialists, anti-capitalists, so that anybody who wanted a storefront, who had the politics, got a storefront, right? So, and we had many storefronts, right? And just so that people know, they were culturally based, a lot of them. We had Black folks who had storefronts. We had some white folks who took a daycare center, made a daycare center. There was a coffee house for white folks on 95th Street. So there is this movement. So that you coming into the office is exciting because, of course, we wanted you there. It's like, what, Yuri wants a storefront and Joanne, of course, let's do this, right? Because you were already part of this community, right? It wasn't like you were coming from the outside. So it was very exciting to act, because we were holding the community down. El Comité had two offices. We had the print shop, I don't know if you remember the print shop, and we had our major office, big offices too. And there were movement offices. So that, yes, exciting in the moment with everything. We had our own community newspaper, Unidad Latina. Yeah. I was trying to see if I found one, because there's a picture of you singing in a brownstone in one of them.
How many families were you able to house in those buildings that you took over?
Look, what the city would do was take the families out, and then we would put the families back and take over the building. I would say over 1,000, hundreds of people were housed. I think one building alone had like 150 folks
Now,
with the family. So
Esperanza, Nobuko has described you to me, and I'm quoting her, as a hardcore organizer. Yeah, it's clear you did extraordinary work in the Upper West Side during this period. And this part of Nobuko's book is about connecting folks in the Asian American movement to what was going on with El Comité. Tell us about chickens. The chickens come home to roost. Nobuko, Bob, tell us about chickens come home to roost.
Yeah, Bob, how did it become Chickens Come Home to Roost? That little storefront that we had.
Yeah, we were very grateful to El Comité for all their support and help in letting us be part of the liberated zone on the Upper West Side. Because it was a huge community. And once we got in, I think we had a bunch of discussions of trying to figure out what to call ourselves. And we took a quote from Malcolm after the assassination of John Kennedy of "Chickens come home to roost." And we took that name and became the Chickens to everybody.
We thought we were going to be revolutionary, and then El Comité would call us up and say, "Hey, can the chickens come over and help us take over the building?" We became El Pollo,
Los Pollitos.
El Pollitos, yeah. I mean, I remember taking Spanish class there, and it was just an amazing experience to be in that community. And then what happened next really was, Bob, remember when you took over that other building for a coffee house?
Let's bring on some more chickens to talk about that.
Okay. Wait a minute. Yeah, before we get to that, let's bring on more chickens. Where's Patty? Where's Patty? Okay, Patty, what was it like for you? I mean,
hold that thought, Bob.
People hear about chickens.
Okay, well, first I want to talk about how I connected with chickens and Nobuko. My first husband, Paul Wong, and I just come out of the UC Berkeley Third World strike, and then moved to University of Illinois in Southern Illinois. And we organized a group of Asian American students, to go to the anti-Vietnam War march in Washington, DC. And that's where we ended up at the church, and for the first time heard Nobuko and Chris singing. And it was like, oh my God, I think PJ and others talked about, like, hearing your song, our song for the first time. It was just so incredible. And I really love what PJ said about feeling it in her body, because, that really is a very different thing than having like solidarity, on sort of a political, ideological level, but just feeling these things in your body is so powerful. So anyway, we got invited to go that New Year's to visit New York City. And that's when we first went to the chicken storefront, and it was like crazy. I mean, it was like, unbelievable to have a space dedicated for meeting study groups. We had so many study groups, and that Eddie Kochiyama was a baby, well, not exactly a baby, but, very young, and his wonderful late sister, Aichi Kochiyama, and Bob, of course, and so many others. And just, I was like 25, I think. And, these experiences really mold you, they affect you for the rest of your life. So thank you so much. Thank you. That's all I'll say right now.
I would never have studied dialectical materialism if it wasn't for you and Paul. Also, part of the storefront was a place that people met, and I heard that you, Bob, and Nancy, that's actually where a romance started blooming as well.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Nobuko, this is the turning point of my life. meeting you. Like everybody else, I was moved by the songs you sang when you came to Pratt Institute, and you and Chris, and I thought, we are the children. I've never heard such songs before. And I was compelled to talk to you afterwards, and you said, well, come on over to Chickens. And there I met Bob Shang, and many other people. And we fell in love, and we started forming the Asian Media Collective down in Chinatown, where Bob was living in a collective along with Corky Lee and Gordon Lee and John Gao. And and Jimmy Lee. But I was so confused after I graduated art school of what I wanted to do with my art and with my life. And there seemed to be an avenue for me at Chickens by meeting Bob and Gordon Lee, who were into media at that time, to actually give my services to the community. The idea of community service was also fairly new for me. So that was really instrumental. And I remember you and I worked on some slideshows together, such as Asian GIs, which called attention to the experiences of Asian Americans who went to the Vietnam War. And then a very special group formed called Asian Women United, and we were both part of that group. And that was a group where Asian women were getting together for the first time, discovering our bodies and our self-worth and our power to change the world. And I remember that slideshow that we did called Something About Me, and it was all about affirmative images of ourselves. And the values that I learned at that time, especially through working with you, Nobuko, with hard work and discipline. We both had jobs at the time, and then we would work all night long. I carried that when we moved to the West Coast, and I went to the I Hotel and participated in that struggle and joined Kearney Street Workshop. I carried that passion and commitment, and we worked there every day too after a day job. And the whole idea of community building and not compromising my artistic integrity or my commitment to social justice has carried me throughout my life. So thank you, Nobuko.
Oh, no, thank you, Nancy, and all of you, actually, because each of you have followed through when that moment, all of us have followed through in some way, shape, or form. And Bob, you've made some indelible images out of that, Bob Shang.
Let's see a few of them.
Yeah, let's
Bob
see.
Shang, we have 3 images that you took, photos you took of squatters during Operation Move-In, I think.
Explain it to us as we're watching.
Yeah, these are squatters or supporters of in the buildings, and they were having a discussion or a meeting. And I was a young photojournalist out of State University at Buffalo. That's where I got my training. And I came back to my hometown, New York. I was born there. And somehow I hooked up with Chickens Come Home to Roost. And I met all the activists and the people there. And Nobuko, yes, you were our matchmaker. And somehow you sort of intuited that we had some similar interests and similar, commonalities that we could, create some interesting products together. But basically, I just want to say I grew up in a very musical household. My father was an opera singer in Shanghai. He emigrated to the States, and every day he would be rehearsing his music. So I had music coming in and out of my ears like since birth. I was practically born in the womb with music. So I was always in love with music. I played a little music myself, but I decided to get into photography because I just, that seemed to be where my craft would be. I came into New York, we joined Chickens, and then I joined another collective in Chinatown called the 217 Collective, with a group of people. That was near Chinatown. I would have my camera with me every day, and we'd go around photographing the community. A lot of new activity was springing up from the movement, and when Grain of Sand album came out, I mean, that was the catapult. That was the glue. That was the spiritual binding of a lot of people in the community. For some reason, when there was a big happening like a demonstration or the Chinatown Health Fair, there was always a concert, and there was always a Chris and Joanne concert. And those concerts
were cheap.
Those concerts really solidified the movement in ways that are so invaluable. I don't even know how to describe it, but it really affected a lot of people. And, it just brought a lot of people together. I think that was an amazing achievement, musical, artistic, social, revolutionary. I don't know how to call it, but anyhow, then when it went on in LA, when you moved to LA, and then of course, we eventually moved to the West Coast as well, and we followed your career. And I began a long career of documenting Asian American artists, because I had really found my community, and it didn't exist before 1970. I was doing this and that. I didn't know where I fit in, but a lot of those songs that you sang just kind of like really resonated, and it just flowered a lot of things from my soul.
But you know what? I think that it's not only the songs, but it's the fact that we were doing work together.
Mm-hmm.
The art was not separated from our activism. It was
right.
all tied together, and so there would be no Chris and Joe if there was no movement. And we were just a voice that emerged, just like you all have emerged, having a different kind of voice. And I didn't know that story about your father. That's really amazing. I love that.
Well, it's interesting. When I played Gagaku, he looked at the Gagaku notation. He said, "Oh, I've played this before, but I played it in Chinese notation. It's very, very similar."
Oh my God.
So I never knew that connection.
Yeah.
And Nancy thinks I should move on, so let other people talk.
Actually, I wonder, thank you, Bob. Thank you, Nancy. I wonder, Bob Miyamoto, if you could tell us a bit about setting up the coffee house, the Dot.
Well, it wasn't me setting up the coffee house. I assisted a brother named Jimmy, who's from San Pedro, Black brother. And he had this vision. He wanted to do this coffee drop-in center, coffee shop. And he had liberated a storefront, and we used to hang out and, like Eddie said, smoke a joint and whatever, and have these dreams. But anyway, because the Upper West Side was going on being redeveloped, there was a lot of construction. So we would go out at night and climb the fences and pass 2x4s over the fence and take him to his storefront. And he built a stage, he built a loft, and it was fun. And to see something grow.
You also took those spools of yeah.
They had big spools of cable. Well, they gave those away, actually. The only thing we really needed to liberate was the lumber. But we used to go back during the day and ask them, the guys, for nails, and they used to give us nails. So Jimmy was able to establish the Dot, and that was a focal point for another artistic takeoff for everybody in the community.
Right. So the Dot came because those tables, those spools, were all painted different colors, and I think even on the walls, SB, didn't we have circles on the walls too? And it's interesting that it was circles, because that's what we were. We were a circle of people. We had created a circle of community and of culture. And when in that place, SP, we heard a kind of music that we had never heard before called Nueva Canción. Can you explain what Nueva Canción was?
The new song movement came out of the Cuban Revolution and Latin America, and it was creating music for the people, by the people. And I think that's, you were part of the new song movement, La Nueva Canción. And the thing about the DAC, or I like to call it Ana Marta's Cafe, was that it brought the whole community together. Not only the squatters community, but citywide. It became a theater outside of the music. There were parties, dancing. I think 50 people started going there. But it was a place to celebrate our souls, because people were in the streets 24/7.
Yeah, and to have a space that we could share like that was really an amazing thing.
And there was also food there, if I remember. There was everything.
Yeah, so let's bring everybody in and everybody, because we're now in the dot, and we had a community there, right, Patty? Do you remember being in the dot?
Well, yes, Paul and I lived on West 81st near Amsterdam, so we could just walk over there. And I remember, thank you, Bob, first of all, I want to thank you, Bob, for helping build that. But I remember those spools very well. But it's where I first heard Pepe and Flora, I remember hearing Chris and Joanne Nobuko at that time, and I'm not ashamed to say that I was definitely a groupie. I memorized all the words to all the songs and went, to the colleges. But anyway, back to the dot. It was amazing to have that space where we could be with Latino, Black, Asian brothers and sisters, and to experience the culture. And I want to share a little story. When I look back on we lived in New York for a year. Oh, first of all, we actually moved from Illinois to New York because of Nobuko and chickens and the whole movement. So that was how important that was. But anyways, that year we lived in the middle of New York, but we never went to a concert, theater, dance, anything, But when I look back on it, so the dot and Chris and Joanne, your music was just like, that was our culture. So, I don't have any regrets about it, except I just like, oh my God, I never took a dance class. I never went to see a performance, but it was so rich. And that time was just so rich politically, culturally. And thank you so much.
So that was theater. It was a living theater, actually, to be part of that whole, we were making our own theater. We were making our lives. And that was much more interesting than going on Broadway, I think.
One of the things, the Somos Asiático, the song, was very, very, very powerful at the time, because it crossed us, right? Poet, Puerto Rican poet Pedro Petri.
Oh, I love him. Yes.
He has, well, it's still available. This poem that talks about Pedro, Maria, Jose. They work and they're always on time and blah, 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 right? I can't remember the whole thing. But in the sweatshops, in the factories, right? The same thing. So it was the same issues that we were dealing with on day to day, whether it was in the west side of Manhattan or in Chinatown, healthcare, education, bilingual education. I mean, we were also part of that fight in Chinatown for bilingual education. And we were supporting each other. And that's what made this movement so exciting because, they talked about Fred Hampton's a Rainbow Coalition, right? We were the Rainbow Coalition in action. And there was a lot of love, a lot of love, you know?
Yes. And you know, when we heard these songs from Cuba, from Venezuela, from Peru, and the poetry that came out of Cuba, Cuban, it was just so advanced, I would say. It had so much soul. And that's when Chris came in, bursting into 52 West 91st Street and said, we got to do a song in Spanish. And he had this idea, somos asiáticos. We are Asians who love to sing for the people. And we speak the same language because we struggle for the same things. The language of liberty, of love, songs of our peoples. I wish because we have Mark here and PJ, we could do it in unison, but we can't do it. But I want to sing this, Somos Asiáticos, and I want to bring Chris into the room because Chris was such a genius of song. And bring back Takashi again, Corky Lee, all our comrades who were part of this beautiful moment, which is a moment I think that needs to be recognized today with gentrification, with the need for solidarity. Nosotros somos asiáticos y nos gusta cantar para la gente. Hablamos la misma lengua porque luchamos por las mismas cosas. La lengua de libertad, líricos de amor, canciones de la lucha, la música del pueblo. Yo para tu gente, tú para la mía. Yo para tu gente, tú para la mía. Me for your people, you for my people. Yo para tu gente, tú para la mía. Yo para tu gente, tú para la mía. Yo para tu gente, tú para la mía. So I hope that we, brought this moment alive. It's so great to just have a reunion with you all who have been so important to this movement and this awakening that we had, and that's again being had right now in this moment, to let people know that we've been here, we've put down roots for you all, and we've had some practice. and we made music, and we're still making music. And Kenny, I see Kenny and Chizu, and I can't see other people, but I just want to say what an honor it's been to be part of this. It can only happen because of you, because of Yuri, who's here with us as well, Yuri, and so many others who were part of us. I'm sorry, we're not here today. Aichi. That we have this ground to stand on. We have many shoulders to stand on. You in the future have many shoulders to stand on, and many memories and many stories and much music. So if you all have something to say, you want to talk some more, or if the people out there have questions that they want to post, I think Harvey, you want to go on?
Yeah. So if people have questions, you can post it in the chat. Let's see. Deborah says, don't be shy. I could think of one lead-in question. There was a comment made earlier about not having known of this activism, a person from Chicago. So it's the question of erasure of of this type of history and the importance that it be known. Connected with that, I think is there was a part in your book where you talk about reception from the younger generation to your work. And you mentioned in particular a concert that you did for Yuri's birthday, I think at UC Berkeley at Wheeler Auditorium in 1997. And you were wondering whether or not the next generation would accept your work. And then you wrote about it. I was wondering if you could talk about that, connecting with the younger generation.
So we walked out there, people had their notebooks on their, I think they were told to come to the event because they would get extra credit. So they all had their notebooks on their laps and they were taking notes. I see them taking notes. And Chris and me and Charlie got up there and we started singing and about the second songs, the notebooks were on the floor and people were starting to clap and people were starting to snap their fingers. And then we knew that we had them. And then when we sang in Spanish, I think people were a little shocked to see Asiaticos, Asians speaking and singing in Spanish, and talking about Jonathan Jackson, etc. But we retold those stories because at this point now in the 90s we were memory keepers, and it was important for us to retell those stories for people to remember that we had a sense of camaraderie and solidarity with the Black movement, the Latino movement, et cetera, that still resonates through our lives.
Okay. And then there's a question from a person in the audience. How did you meet Charlie Chin and what happened? Yeah.
So I write about this in the book too, that we were doing a concert at Pratt, I think it was Pratt, and Grace Lee Boggs was speaking, and there was just it was a big conference, and we were in the dressing room, and somebody comes in and introduces us to Charlie Chin, and he's sitting there, he's tuning up his guitar, and I'm looking at Chris. I said, boy, this guy's really, he really knows what he's doing, because his warm up was really very good, and then the person comes in again and said, we're running late, and we don't know if we can get everybody on. And so Charlie said, well, let them go on, because he was listening to our songs, and I'll accompany them. So the three of us went on, and Charlie backed us up basically. And I think he sang one song, and then Chris backed him up, and that was the beginning of us starting to move around as a trio.
And then there's one last question is, let's see. Okay, there's one question about a faithful future for the API community, but I think it goes into this question of solidarity. And what do you see as the future with regards to issues today, and how music can transform people's thinking? 'Cause I guess your whole book is about solidarity, and you're coming to understanding of it. Yeah.
Well, solidarity is a big word, but why I wanted to do this program with my friends and fellow travelers is to show how us working together, it's more than solidarity. It was relationships. It was building work together. It was throwing off ideas, just like the dot. It grew out of just people sitting together and talking and dreaming. It's about dreaming together. It's not about just deciding that we're going to support in solidarity this or support in solidarity that. Let's come together. Let's do something together, especially now. And this issue of affordable housing is a huge issue. There's so many issues that we could unite around. And so I wanted to have this larger group of comrades here together to show just one example of how we came together in an incredible, wonderful way at this moment. And I just want to say, I went back to that spot where the dot was, in 91st and Columbus, several years ago. And I went there thinking, with the nostalgia in my heart. And then I looked up and I saw, they were selling selling hamburgers, McDonald's. It was a McDonald's. And I was like furious. Oh my God, this is a McDonald's now. And I was really upset. And then I started writing about it. And then I thought about it. And I said, you know, what happened in this space was more important than the space itself. That what we learned from working together, Nancy, Bob, my Bob, you know, all of us, what we learned working together, SB, what we did, what we took back to Puerto Rico or whatever, wherever direction we went to, that experience of what we had together is with us, and it was spread and where it needed to be spread. So it wasn't lost. The dot and the squatters movement was not lost.
Thank you. Okay, so the next part here is Janie's gonna make a final announcement about purchasing the book.
Okay, but I want to once more bring in Rob Takashi Yanagita, because we love him so, and he was there, and he's been there for you as well with his storefront, and I just want to bring him again into the space.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry I have to be the one to end this, but hi everyone, this is Janie from Eastern Books. I wanted to also uplift a lot of the comments coming in from the chat. Just a lot of love for Nobuko and this heartwarming discussion. And if you want to read more, you can purchase Nobuko's book, Not Your Butterfly, at Eastern Books of Berkeley, asiabookcenter.com. We are currently open for in-store shopping, and you can also order online to pick it up or have it shipped to you. And it's currently on sale for this event, and it also comes with an autographed book plate with a nice message. And we also have a final announcement from one of our today's event's co-sponsors. It's JSA's 50th year, so please go and check out their cultural celebrations and educational programmings on their website. You can see it here at jsa.org. And lastly, before we close the event, I just want to extend our deepest gratitude to first Nobuko Miyamoto and the speakers, Eddie Kochiyama, Bob Miyamoto, Patty Hirota Cohen, Bob Singh, Nancy Hom, Esperanza Martel, PJ Hirabayashi, Mark Isu, Jeff Mori, Harvey Dong, and Deborah Wong. I think listening to your stories and conversations was so incredible, and seeing this reunion of friends and activists come together to describe the development of such a historical moment with the Asian American community and movement. So I feel very honored to be a part of this, so thank you once more. I also wanted to thank those who provided photographs and visuals. Oh, sorry. So Third World Newsreel for providing the break and enter clip, Bob Shin for his amazing photographs of Yuri Kochiyama and the Three Squatters, Donna Ibata and the Great Leaps Archives photographs, and also our sponsors, Asian American and Asian Diaspora Studies Department at UC Berkeley, JSA Eastern Books of Berkeley. Thank you to David and Kathy Ng for donating the auction item. It was Grain of Sand, the vinyl original album, and the winner of it was Lucy Marai. And finally, program production. So thank you, Matt and B, for making this program work technically. And I think that's all that I have. If Nobuko, you have any last words?
No, just my gratitude to B and Harvey for allowing all of this chaos. We finished in time also. So, and thank you all for coming on. I know for taking your time to be part of this discussion and reunion. I love you all. Thank you for coming on and watching this. Hi, Kenny. Hi, G. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And also thank you, Janie, too.
Janie and Matt, thank you so much, Janie and Matt, for all your work and putting up with my fussiness.
Okay. So.
And Deb Wong, please. Deb has been a partner and a comrade, walking me through both of the book and the album. She's been there, a trooper, all through this. So I couldn't do it without Deborah Wong. Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Esperanza, for coming all the way from New York City.
All right, thank you everyone for coming. Have a great rest of your weekend.